Please, he has already mentioned that. Don't make mockery of this seminar. If you invite us, at least give some time. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for such an important seminar. So since it is very difficult to read the paper, and I think that after every paper there should have been some discussion. Otherwise, we can't understand Nursi fully because it needs some understanding. Because people don't know much about Nursi in the Indian context. So since we don't have time, so I will just give the gist in my own words. Otherwise, my paper is about 20 pages, so it will take a lot of time. First of all, I have tried to know myself what is the meaning of Western civilization. Because Damascus sermon is a very important sermon. I have read many lectures of great scholars, but the first time I have found such a great sermon which has been given by Nursi. Before great scholars, there were scholars, there were ulama, and there were many other people. And he has elaborated some such dimensions of Islamic civilization. And then he has talked about two things. One is, what is Western civilization and what are the different types of Europe? He discriminates between Europe. He is not like that journalist type of analysis, no. He is a very realistic man. He knows what is the positive aspect of West and what we have to learn from the West. Their sciences, their reason, and their rejection of the bigotry of the clergy. He says that West has liberated itself from clergy, and Muslims have no clergy like that. So he talks about Western civilization, and then he talks that it is being perpetuated on the basis of materialistic philosophy and naturalism, and even West has corrupted, materialism of the West has corrupted Christianity. There have been some good aspects in Western civilization, that is because of the Christianity, but even Christianity has been corrupted by the materialism of the West, which he calls plague of materialism. And then he talks about naturalism. And one important term he uses is aggressive atheism. So aggressive atheism, he is against that. But he says that so far as other sciences, other philosophies of West are concerned, there is nothing wrong in that. So second point which he mentions is, in Islam, here in this Damascus sermon, he says this thing before ulama, and I think it's a first voice. And it has been not heard seriously. We should hear this voice, and we need this voice greatly this time. Because there is no one is talking about reason so far as ulama are concerned. They do talk about science, they do talk about education, technology. But Nursi is the first person who talks before ulama about these issues. What are the good aspects of Western civilization, what are the bad aspects, and then he talks also about science. He says, as he quotes Bismarck and Carlyle, he says that I have evidence from these great scholars. They say when Muslims become more Islamic, they can grow in science. But when they leave Islam, they become degenerated. They become dogmatic. So what in other religions, if they want to become scientific, they have to leave their religions behind. So this is a very important point. So usually people might think that Islam is contradictory to science. But Nursi says no, because Muslims have left their religion behind, so they have degenerated in science. And when they had religion intact, they were also ahead of others in science and technology. It's a very great point, and it needs to be understood by all of us. Second point is that reason in Islam. So he talks here that Islam has been never against reason. Islam is always talking about rational argumentation. And then he takes different arguments from science, which are found in the Quran. And he gives those, elaborates those in detail, and I have mentioned those. And then important point about Europe and Islam. So now there are two types of Europes. He says I'm against that Europe, which is based on despotism, on materialism, on naturalism, on aggressive atheism. But so far under Europe is concerned, which is rational, which is influenced by Christianity, where there are human values, so I am not opposing that. So we have to make this differentiation. Thirdly, he says that there is Christianity in Europe, so we have to cooperate with them. We have to have interreligious dialogue among Christians and Muslims. And he has some good friends from the Christians. So he is not a bigoted person. He is not a rejectionist. He says that there are some good, well-meaning people in the West, especially the Christians. Let us have a dialogue. And it was because of that reason that recently, even the Pope, John Paul, he had just organized some dialogue with Muslims in Ankara. It is in the consonance with their basic concept of Nursi. And then about that, he says that finally Islam has the future. This is a very important part, civilizational aspect. And I have just tried to give details what Mr. Ghazali says, what Marazi says, and different people about civilization. Then I have come to Nursi and put everything in comparative perspective. Because unless you present things in comparative perspective, you don't understand things better. Because Allah shall tell if you want to appreciate the things, you should compare them with others, opponents. And I have found Nursi a profound thinker in that also. And he is trying to tell us that Islam has a future, a futuristic vision he gives. And only Islam has future, no one else. So this is a hope in that despair where people were thinking, they were feeling gloomy. And there was a lot of chaos in the Muslim world. But Nursi comes out with a hope and optimism. And he says Islam has a future. But he has it was not just a irrational thinking, I should say Nozbillah. And it was not something, figment of imagination but Nursi comes out with arguments why Islam has future. Islam believes in progress. Islam believes in science. Islam believes in reasoning. Islam believes in advancement. Islam has never laid any imposition of clergy on science, development of science, advancement of science. I was very much hurt when I heard that Ghazali and Ashari they have been the stumbling blocks in the cause of Islam. And I have proved in my thesis that Ghazali and Ashari were never responsible for a debacle of scientific development. There are other reasons for that. But Nursi was convinced about his legacy. He said she has mentioned about Mu'tazilates, he has mentioned about Asharites, and he does not denounce them. He says that these have been the great thinkers and they have served Islam in a better way to progress in scientific and philosophical thinking. So in this way, he just tries to say that Islam has a future because Islamic civilization has the wherewithal. And he says that Western philosophies have dehumanized human beings. Now it is Islam which will liberate it from the dehumanization. And so but Islam has to be presented with reason, with argument, and then he talks about Jihad Manavi for that reason, Jihad Manavi, and he gives a totally different interpretation of Jihad. That Jihad is to be launched through reason, argumentation, because previously sword was having a slave, now it is argument. So both are sultan in that sense, and our iman has to be iman tahqiqi, not taqlidi. So such type of terms you find these are the first time I have heard, and Jihad Manavi. And Jihad Manavi is a process to change your society and uproot all the negative values. And instead of that, so that good values should be nurtured. And then education becomes very important factor in that respect. In this way, he tries to show both aspects of Western civilization and Islamic civilization, how Islam can grow and how Islamic civilization has the wherewithal with which it can give a futuristic prospect for modern world. And then whole world will be, and he says that Christianity will hand over itself to Islam. And Christianity will give way for Islam. So even Christianity will become Islam, he says. So it's a great point. And that also is in consonance with the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And in the last period of the world, Jesus Christ will descend from the heavens, and he will also be a follower of Prophet ﷺ. So he does not ridicule ahadith. As some of our marginalists, I don't know why they do that, and they may have reasons, but I don't know, I'm not satisfied with that. But see Nursi, he is convincing. It is such a way, scientific, rational, philosophical, argumentative, demonstrative, all the arguments he is using. And then he is proving this point that Western civilization will give way to Islam, and Islam will have a future, and West has to accept Western Islam. West has to accept Islam as it is paradigm for the deliverance, because otherwise this whole world will be doomed. And then he opposes oppression. He denounces conflict. He denounces violence. And with these words, I will just conclude. And with this one last point, that I think that if Nursi is being presented in modern times, because I have studied all these most of our scholars and others, I don't find such type of great appeal in the thoughts of our scholars. They are talking in the terms of ideology. He is talking in the terms of Iman. And Iman becomes a great source of resilience in all aspects of life. And that is the only tool in our hands which can oppose West, not only ideologies. Ideologies are coming from the West, and we adopted Islam by it. But Iman is something ingrained in Islam and inherent in Islam. With these words, I thank you all.
Now request Professor S.A.M. Pasha to present his paper on Islam and modernity, critiquing Western. Would you pronounce the name that you mentioned here?